Welcome back to the Hoops Report on Pittsburgh Sports Now. I'm George Michalowski with PSN. Today's Wednesday, January 8th, and Pitt got dismantled by Duke last night. Number four Duke, that the Blue Devils are ranked fourth right now. I think Duke, after watching that game last night, is clearly one of, if not the best team in the country. I honestly think we learned more about Duke last night than we did about Pitt, and I think a lot of national opinions would say so as well. It was an absolute domination. And the way that Duke pulled away in the end and just suffocated Pitt, I think suffocation is the best way to describe that defensive effort by the Blue Devils of Pitt, especially in that second half. Pitt did show some fight, and Jeff Capel said it in his post-game press conference, like, "Look, it got away from us at the end there, but he was proud of how they fought and stayed in it for a while." You obviously don't want to see a 29-point loss. You don't want to see an 18-0 run to end the game. Those two things really bad. Nothing to be proud of in those numbers. But all things considered, when you're playing against a great team like Duke, an elite team like Duke, you can't make mistakes. And Pitt made plenty of mistakes. They honestly, a lot of them came at the hands of Duke, though. Like I really do think, again, this was way more impressive for the Blue Devils than it was heartbreaking for Pitt. Cooper Flag was spectacular. Kind of took him a bit to get going offensively, but he showed you guys pretty quickly how he can, flip a game upside down, take over a game with that dunk over Guillermo. The next possession had another dunk, hit a couple threes. I mean, he was everywhere on both sides of the ball. I think the most glaring thing from start to finish about this game, the most glaring takeaway that I noticed was Duke's length, Duke's Duke's athleticism, and just their uh, pure size and ability to defend and lock up the full court. It felt so congested everywhere, and it felt like Pitt had to work so hard to get each open look. And even when they were getting open looks, it felt rushed, and that's what good teams do. They speed you up. Kaman Malawach, man, he is special. I talked about him yesterday. He's a freak down low, and you saw that out of the gates with that big slam to open up the game. I think that Duke team is loaded and all over the court with positional size, positional athleticism. Those guys were getting up, they were getting down, getting on loose balls. Like they were all over the court. Cooper Flag, it starts at the top. His leadership, his competitiveness, like Jeff Capel said, are evident from watching him for just one game. And we saw how that can help a team win in last night's win over Pitt. So I do think that overall we learned a lot more about Duke. I don't think this is the end of everything that Pitt fans hoped for this season. I don't think this means Pitt's a bottom half team in the ACC. I still don't think this means Pitt's outside of the top 30 teams in the country. I think Pitt has another opportunity to prove that they're in that top 30, that they are an NCAA tournament lock this Saturday against Louisville. That'll be a huge game, especially because it's an opportunity to answer, to come back from getting knocked out. And that's what happened. They got knocked out. Jeff Capel said in his post-game press conference, which is up on Pittsburgh Sports Now's YouTube channel, go check that out. He said, "Look, unfortunately, we have experience doing that, coming back from a blowout loss already this year. So they did it coming back from the Mississippi State game. They came out a little slow against Virginia Tech, but uh, eventually got the job done. Jalen Lowe with a big performance in that game. That brings me to another topic. I guess another negative point from that game against Duke is the play of Jalen Lowe and Ish Leggett. Again, I credit their struggles to Duke's defense, speeding them up, speeding up Pitt, them feeling the burden of being down 10, being down 11, 12 points throughout most of this game. I think most of their shots weren't terrible. I mean, you look for those kind of opportunities and looks if you're low and Leggett. Pretty much every game, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary that we see out of those two. And they haven't shot the field goal percentages and the 3-point field goal percentages that we expected this year, by the way. Like Ish and Jalen are both shooting below what I think is a reasonable expectation for them to shoot this year. So it's not like these guys were shooting. Ish has had some games, notably 9 for 9 from 2-point range in the last game against Stanford. But it's not like these two have been sharp shooters this year. That was the case again. And without a guy like Blake Hinson, when you're playing against an elite team in an elite environment like Duke, you need sparks, number one. You need scoring, number two. And you can't afford to go 3 for 12 from the field. You can't afford to go 5 of 27 combined between Ish and Jalen, 19% in that game and expect to win. So I don't think it's anything that's different about their games. I don't think this means the ACC now knows exactly how to play Jalen and Ish. I think it's a matter of Duke having size, having length, and having athleticism to switch onto those guys and lock them up on every possession with anybody. They bring in a guy like Sion James, who I don't even think. I mean, I probably mentioned him once on the show yesterday. I don't think many Pitt fans knew who Sion James was, but that guy's built like a linebacker. He can switch on to guards. So can the bigs. I mean, come on, Malawach, like we saw, did a pretty good job staying in front of Pitt's guards, as did the rest of the players on that team. So overall, defensively, the Blue Devils won the game. I think it was clear that they weren't going to let Pitt do anything. Pitt had its lowest scoring half of the year. It was the first game that Pitt hasn't made at least 20 field goals this season. So not a good performance for the Panthers offensively. Some positives. Damian Dunn, seeing him back out there is obviously a positive. He made a couple shots, hit a three. Looked like he was shaking his hand a bit in the beginning, but I think you expect to see him work his way back. That's what the report was from Chris Carter of the Post-Gazette, is that Pitt was going to work him back into the lineup and be pretty cautious with his minutes. But good to see Dame back regardless. I think that's an injury that is going to take some time, not in terms of conditioning, which other injuries often do, but more so in terms of, okay, getting a good feel for your ball handling, getting a good feel for your shot again, because it was the right thumb on his, or it was the thumb on his right shooting hand. So it's going to be a bit of a process working his way back into game shape in that sense. But good to see him back for the first time since before Thanksgiving. As Capel noted, Zach Austin also went down with what looked like a rough shoulder injury. Cooper Flagg kind of poked him when Zach was guarding Cooper, and Zach immediately went down. His right arm kind of went limp for a minute there, screaming in pain on the floor. It looked like that was going to be really serious. Zach checked back in a few minutes later. That is a positive, I guess, stemming from what could have been much worse. But looks like Zach Austin is all right. And then Cam Corin. In terms of best performances from Pitt players, I look at Cam Corin as a guy who I've talked about so many times this year, and Pitt fans and Pitt media members have talked about so many times this year about him, getting better and working on his rebounding and getting more aggressive and bringing more energy down low and grabbing the ball. Sometimes it's come down to like, why can't he just grab the ball? He's a big man. He's athletic. He's fast. He played a great game, I thought. Obviously, when your team loses by 29 points, it's hard to say that anyone played a great game. It's all relative here in terms of how the rest of his teammates played and the competition they were going up against. But all things considered, I thought Corin brought great energy to the team. He had 4 offensive rebounds. He had team high 11 points, had 7 rebounds overall. But his matchup, man, like that's as tough as it's going to get. Facing the length, the athleticism, again, the strength that Duke has, not only in the front court, but all over the court. No easy task for Cam. He actually guarded Cooper Flagg sometimes. I thought he looked pretty solid, keeping up with Cooper. So Cam Corin, I think that's a development that that Pitt would really benefit from going down the line this year, going down the season, the rest of the way, is if Cam can really, really come into his own and become that scorer who's giving you 10 plus points a game. But more importantly, become that guy who's bringing energy down low, who's boxing out, who's sticking a body on a defender to grab a rebound, and who's going up aggressively and ripping the ball down off the glass. I think that's one of the most important developments we could possibly see out of the rest of the ACC slate, even if we see a couple more losses in there. So I think Cam's performance was probably my number one takeaway in terms of individual performances. But as Jeff Capel said, as a team, too many things went wrong to beat a really good elite team like Duke. I think Duke proved that it is one of the top teams in the country, if not the best team in the country. There were a couple other top 10 teams who got blown out this week already. So it's been a tough go for numerous teams, not just Pitt, against these other top teams. So not a good loss. Obviously, 29 points you never want to see, and 18-0 run to end the game is terrible. You don't want to go out sad. Another thing, Damian Dunn assessed a flagrant 2 at the end of the game. I know it didn't look crazy. It didn't look, too aggressive in force, and it may have been a flop of some sort. All I'm going to say is if a Duke player did that to a Pitt player, I'm sure not just Pitt fans, but the whole internet would be saying, "Oh, classic Duke move." I mean, this is Bush League and all that. So can't do that if you're Damian Dunn. It's just not a good look to go out on an 18-0 run, have a player get kicked out who's a veteran on your team and a leader. So just a tough ending to that game for Jeff Capel. I'm sure he can't wait to get back to Pittsburgh and prepare for Louisville, who picked up a huge win last night against Clemson. Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards combined to go 3 for 21 from the field. I would have thought Clemson blew out Louisville if I heard that was going to be the case for the game, but um, Javon Hadley, 32 points and 10 rebounds. Louisville wins a big one over Clemson. Both of those teams are now 4-1 in ACC play. Pitt obviously now 3-1. Duke 5-0 in the ACC. So the league is kind of taking shape. These are 3-4. These are four of the teams, I guess, along with North Carolina, that I see in that top mix, in the top four, top five of the ACC throughout the rest of the season. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for more.